With that foundational knowledge of quality, including the focus on the customer, let's now move on to the idea of process improvement, including associated tools like the value stream map and the SIPOC diagram. In short, to fix quality, you have to fix the underlying process. Another way to say that is a broken process will keep making defects. A strong process makes high quality outputs. Fix the process to improve quality. Let's define a process using the textbook from the Council for Six Sigma Certification, CSSC, who administers your certification exams. They define a process as a collection of tasks, steps, and activities, and these are usually performed in a specific order. Note the yellow highlighting here and throughout the PowerPoints. That typically indicates wording that is pulled directly or at least closely from the textbook to be consistent with the certifications. A process transforms inputs into outputs. And those outputs are goods, such as products, services, or possibly both. For instance, Ford transforms car components such as engines, tires, body parts into cars, i.e. a good, via a production process. Similarly, we're currently transforming you as a student asking for training into a certified quality expert via an educational process, a service, but it's still a production process. We can think of an organization like Ford or this class as being one enormous process. And the value stream map serves as a tool in quality management to map out the organization as a process. In other words, we depict the entire organization on a one-page flowchart. The text defines a value stream map as a pictorial representation of the sequence of all items, events, and people required to produce an end result. It thus offers a high-level overview of the total flow of materials and information throughout the production process of the entire organization. So it's the organization's primary transformation process on one page. And a key feature in the value stream map is identifying value and non-value added activity. Recall our definition of value as something that the customer is willing to pay for. So value added activities are things that we do as an organization that customers want, such as assembling a high quality car or conducting a high quality class. Yet organizations are often rife with non-value added activities that are wasteful. In the Lean chapter, we'll learn how to apply the Tim Woods acronym to find that waste. But for now, one common example of non-value add is waiting. Suppose that raw materials at Ford sit idle for days waiting to be added to a car during production. Or likewise, suppose that your internet connection is inconsistent, so your recordings for this class make you wait. Waiting is typically a non-value added activity, i.e. waste. And as we said, there are many other forms that we'll learn. Again, the value stream map not only diagrams the organization's primary transformation, i.e. production process, but also specifies the value and non-value added activities. So quality experts like you will be can then target the largest contributors of non-value added activity. Reducing this waste will improve customer value, such as increased speed, i.e. reduced waiting, as well as fewer defects and lower costs. Another tool that we can apply in quality management is the SIPOC diagram. SIPOC also provides a high-level view of the entire organization, but also includes immediate connections to the supply chain, such as suppliers and customers. The text highlights SIPOC as one of the most often used tools for understanding process components and relevance, saying it's simple and effective. SIPOC is an acronym. The S stands for supplier, I is input, P process, O is output, and finally, C is customer. Supplier, input, process, output, customer. Suppliers provide inputs such as raw materials and services to us. We then process, i.e., transform these inputs into outputs, finished goods and services, to deliver to customers. If we divide our SIPOC diagram into 3 components, we can visualize where our organizational operations fit with the supply chain and vice versa. In the middle is transforming inputs into outputs. The inputs, the raw materials, components, and raw services, enter the production process and come out the other side as finished outputs, goods and services. That's what would be called operations or production. And then sandwiched on either side of this is supply chain. On the left side, we see sourcing or buying, purchasing. How do we acquire the inputs for production from our suppliers? We might call that supply management. On the right side, we see distribution. How do we get the inputs to our customers, specifically delivering those outputs via logistics, including warehousing and transportation? This might be called logistics management, distribution, or order fulfillment. So summarizing, the value stream map and the SIPOC diagram are tools that we can use to map out the high-level organizational production process. What do we fundamentally do, i.e., produce? We can indeed think of the organization as one very large, complex process, but also realize that the organization contains many, many lower-level processes that interact as part of the overall organizational process. The SIPOC diagram showed some of those examples, including supply, purchasing inputs from suppliers, as well as production, transforming the inputs and outputs, and then distribution, moving outputs to customers. But there are many other organizational processes, and each of these has its own sub-processes. Like human resources includes hiring, onboarding, training, compensation. Finance looks at budgeting and cash flow and financial reporting. Accounting includes accounts payable, accounts receivable, and taxes. Information systems includes enterprise resource planning, data management, cybersecurity. And there are many, many, many others, and each of these processes consist of many other processes. Just recognize that your job involves at least a few processes somewhere in the organization. Some employees in very large organizations work on just a few or maybe even one process. In smaller organizations, employees play a role in many diverse processes. So the point here is to think about your specific processes at work. Do they function well? Could they function better? And if they did work better, would you be able to deliver higher value? That's the point of the importance of processes to quality. Quality outputs in the form of goods and services come from processes. If the outputs have defects, or at least are not delivering the expected value, then we have to fix the underlying processes. Fix the process to improve the quality of the outputs. So even though our customers focus on the quality of our outputs, we, as quality experts, work to fix the underlying processes. Process improvement drives higher quality, higher value. It's therefore critical that we create a proactive culture of continuous improvement in the organization. Continuous improvement. So we're seeking to always improve processes to deliver better value to customers. There are always opportunities to make improvements, and if we are the best in the industry, we have to be constantly seeking out those improvements. Continuous improvement is another key tenet of quality management. The other that we've already seen is the voice of the customer. So from that perspective, all quality experts, whether they focus on Six Sigma or Lean or both, are focused on the voice of the customer and continuous improvement. We need an organizational culture that supports continuous improvement. Bad culture holds back the organization, keeping it stagnant and unable to deliver the right value to customers. Let's look at this perspective of continuous improvement from quality leaders. Dyson, even though he's now a billionaire, approximately 17 billionaire, James Dyson, the vacuum cleaner king, maintains that nothing is ever good enough. Everything can always be improved. He recommends a mindset of permanent dissatisfaction with your products and services as the way to continually improve and succeed. Henry Ford said over 100 years ago that no single operation is ever considered as the best or cheapest way. It can be improved. Steve Jobs from Apple urges a hierarchy of skepticism. Customers are never satisfied, so we must continuously improve. Intel, whose chips are inside most of our computers, warns that success builds complacency, and then complacency breeds failure. Only the paranoid survive. That's an urgent way to promote continuous improvement. John D. Rockefeller, 150 years ago or so, founded Standard Oil, which was eventually broken up to become companies that we now know like ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, and Marathon. He said that if you go to sleep on a win, you'll wake up with a loss. IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad, its founder, warned that achieving goals acts like a sleeping pill. It makes you complacent, so you should set new goals all the time. The point is pursuing the goals and not necessarily achieving them. Continuous improvement is just that, a constant pursuit of higher goals, i.e., better customer value. A few more. Daniel Ek, the founder of Spotify, warns that while being content may feel good, it can be a form of lazy happiness. You're not working at it anymore. Content people don't go for impact, i.e., higher value. And finally, Bob Kierlin founded Fastenal, an industrial distributor. He said that anytime you're not thinking about the future, someone else will eat your lunch. So who's Fastenal? From its IPO in 1987, their stock generated an overall return of 211,000%. That is, if your parents or grandparents invested $10,000 40 years ago in Fastenal, that would now be worth $21 million. Bob was really, really good at his job, so we can learn a lot from him and the other companies that we just discussed. We need a culture of continuous improvement. Otherwise, our customers will eventually go elsewhere. Another way to frame that is to say that one organization's mediocrity is our opportunity. Your mediocrity is my opportunity. That's the harsh reality of the business world. Leading organizations and its employees usually become complacent. We have to avoid that. So take Sears, which really was the Amazon of its time. It pioneered mail order retail from catalogs in the days long before the internet. And Sears was the largest retailer in the US from World War II until the 1970s, so decades and decades. Now it's virtually extinct.